Okay, audio and technical difficulties. We are back online. This is just how sometimes doing live things go. As Nigel, you can probably imagine when doing
Yeah,
Autodesk University, what that would be like.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, so yeah, I mean, we're gonna go back through a few questions here. I mean, for the listeners that didn't catch up on what we had because it was silent. So anyway, so I guess just a brief introduction, Nigel, for yourself. What's your background? How'd you get into the FM stream? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I've worked at Heathrow now for 20 years, but I think if I look even when I started my career as a designer of dot matrix printers, my thinking was all around modeling and using model output to actually drive whether it's design or how you manufacture or how you operate things. My time at Heathrow started actually at one of our big mega projects, which was our Terminal 5 project. This was a huge project back in the early 2000s, and my role there was to really try and put a structure in place of how we're going to deliver over a million maintainable assets. We we utilized, you know, new ways of working with our supply chain, and we really tried to gear up uh, the, the way that people delivered their information. I've also worked within engineering at Heathrow, and that was really interesting for me because it kind of puts your feet on the ground where you get to see where information gets used by our operational colleagues, and it's kind of given me that whole kind of rounded view of round tripping data right the way through from design through to build and then into operations. And last year, during our challenging year with COVID, I was actually part of our digital transformation program, which was really setting some of our bedrock for some of our future thinking in the digital space. So yeah, I mean, it's been a really exciting time for me at Heathrow. Moved around lots of different departments, but kind of always had that digital thread. And as I said, I think it sort of starts off my early career as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's a hell of a career. I know it's been crazy how the information track has been moving and much quicker in across seas in Great Britain and everywhere else. Like it's been interesting to see how the standard has trickled over to Canada, United States.
Mm.
So I guess a big question is with all this data, it's really tough to manage. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
data flowing out there. So how do you deal with such a massive amount of data for a project at Heathrow? How do you capture all that?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it is a challenge, and it still is. You know, we haven't got all the answers, but I think what we realise, and we realised this when actually talking about the Terminal 5 project, when we actually were delivering a big mega project that was going to deliver, as I said, over a million maintainable assets. We realised that a lot of projects around Heathrow were not aligned. They kind of delivered the way that they did it. And the first thing that we did was to put a common classification system in place. We call it our common language,
Mm-hmm.
which is now quite mature. Back in the early 2000s, it was quite new, and this enabled us to call our assets the same thing, you know, wherever they were used, whether it's from a financial point of view, whether it's from design, whether it is from construction or operating that asset. So the common language has been really key. And what that also enabled us to do was to start to put technology in place. For instance, our common data environment, which is made up of a number of tools to help manage that information as it comes from projects and then moves into operations. Our technology stack at the moment, has been in place for many years, and actually some of it is end of life, and we are looking at replacing it. And we've been doing that over the last year, but kind of rethinking the way that that common data environment works. And we're trying to move away from transactionally working with our supply chain into more of a environment, a cloud-based type environment that allows our suppliers to progressively develop their information in our environment. And I think this will be a big
That's
change,
helpful.
and this is a big change for the future.
Do you find any like security restrictions from having cloud-based
Yeah,
information? Yeah, I can imagine.
yeah. Funny enough, strategically, technology and IT at Heathrow is moving very cloud based. Although we
Cool.
do get very twitchy
Yeah.
and about information.
Hmm.
Information can be quite sensitive.
Can imagine.
Um,
Yep.
but as I say, strategically we do. The challenge that I've found, and this I've spoken to a number of organisations similar to us. Most of our IT governance is based on on-prem type solutions, and it means when you're putting cloud-based solutions in, it just makes it that much harder to follow that same governance. So we, from an IT perspective, are looking at readjusting our governance and our policies so that
Makes
we can
sense.
actually get cloud-based solutions on board a lot easier without having to forfeit and not having to go through all the cyber stuff, but just
Makes
looking
sense.
at doing it differently.
Yep. Yep. And make it more accessible too, which
Yeah,
is
absolutely,
huge.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, so the last time we chatted, and we had a little chat at Autodesk University, and before that, we there was a big plan, obviously, regarding the expansion of Heathrow. I mean,
Mm.
that's I'm assuming with that presents an amazing use case for BIM to FM translation. So I would assume that with the condition of where things are right now, that allows you to explore that further.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very good point about expansion. So last time, we had some big plans around our expansion, and we were
Hmm.
using that to really make the change in the digital space. So we
Hmm.
we were looking at using that to set Heathrow up for the future.
Yeah.
Um, Now, unfortunately, in February last year,
Hmm.
there was a judicial review which has put that expansion plan on pause at the
Yep.
moment, and
Expected.
that's as far as I can kind of go into that because there's obviously
Yep.
all the kind of legal
Yeah,
stuff
for sure.
there. But
Yeah.
but there was kind of 2 or 3 years of work behind expansion from the digital
Hmm.
space that really started to rethink the way that we deliver projects and how we utilize that information. So there was a lot of good foundation work done that last year we used the time that we had to put that into a new digital program
Hmm.
that is now starting to look at how do we deliver some of those user cases in our future way that we want to work at Heathrow. So a lot of that work that we've done, we're now using for our kind of new way of working with digital data. So it's all not lost. And for
Yeah.
me, I'm kind of using this time where we have actually got quite a low throughput of capital project development to start to just test out some of these strategies in the business, so where there is a project, let's look at getting that new way of working with that project embedded. If we've got
Yep.
a new way of procuring that information, let's get it out into contract. Let's see and test the supply chain's understanding of it to make sure that it's achievable. Because, as a client, we can say what we want in terms of information requirements, but it's got to be achievable by the supply chain.
Very true.
And I'm really keen to make things that we ask for really achievable so that we're getting the value out of that
Hmm.
delivery of data, and the supply chain can deliver it
It's
easily.
true. Yeah. So it's funny. I chatted with Darren Cash last week of Turner and
Mm.
Townsend, who
Right, yeah.
yeah, who kind of feeds into that whole supply chain, and yeah, it's interesting to see how that information is being prepared, and I like to call it a doomsday opportunity. That's just something I
Yeah.
call it. And it's because these doomsday opportunities that come up where you're preparing for something that could be 4 or 5 years in the future help us
Mm,
learn 5 years previous so that we can be ready for it coming up. And
mm,
I always see that as an opportunity, especially to learn and, expand that mental portfolio.
mm,
Yeah, it's amazing. And with all the education surrounding it, and your presentation at Autodesk University of last year, the year before last year, it was an eye opener for a lot of parties. There were a lot of behind the scenes conversations that started opening up about BIM to FM, even with architects, and
mm.
cost consultants. We started saying like, are are we supposed to get involved in FM now? Like,
Yeah.
is that part of our process? And I think, there's a lot of knowledge spikes happening right now with conversion and how the data is being moved from beginning to end, which is great. I mean, you're a trendsetter. So
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's really good, and I think it is all about embedding that requirement really early on, so that architects and the consultants can start to get involved in preparing that data, and it's doing it efficiently. We don't want to put an overhead on, but we want to actually make use of that information that is created, and so that it can transition into the next stage of the design. Going from design into build, and then eventually from build into operations, and it's got to be seamless.
it
And
does.
I think if you get that embedded in really early on, and bring those, bring your get your design team involved, have that close contact with the client. It's an ideal way of doing it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty excellent to see. I mean, it's pretty evident from the information that you've gathered that the BIM to FM workflow has been a positive impact for facilities managers. Like, have you seen like the facilities managers holding the content in their hand, and has the positive impact come back to you? Like,
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point. Because whatever we're doing, it's got to actually give some benefit. And as I say, I think the biggest change that we made a number of years ago was the way we classify our data. So whether it's a document, whether it's the graphical representation of the asset, or whether it's the information about that asset, how it gets maintained, it's all classified the same. That
yeah,
that information is spread about different data repositories, and having that classification, that key within all of that information, has enabled us to connect those systems together. So, for instance, our operational colleagues, if they're out on site dealing with a work order and having to locate an asset, they can use their mobile device to click on the work order. It will tell them the assets that are relevant to that work order, and then they can find where they're located, and they will bring up a map. Now, the technology to do that is really simple. It's kind of URL type linking bits of capability,
yeah.
but the data behind it is the bit that is the intelligent. That key is in all those different facets of data, and we get great feedback from our engineering colleagues who are now holding these mobile devices. They can get to their jobs a bit easier. They all because we've kind of just linked some data sets together. So that really allows us to start moving that on to the next stage. So we do, engineers are quite hard to change the way they do things. But I think that was one example of change that kind of got us some good feedback, and it also helped empower the engineers on actually having visibility of all the information. So even where that information was poor, they were able to see it, and they were empowered to actually help to make it change, to help change the quality of it.
For sure. And it's interesting too, because the biggest discussion that I've been having recently, and I had back with Carl Storms on one of my previous episodes, the introduction of augmented reality into our whole
Yeah.
building lifecycle process. And I talk quite a bit about a new wave of employment that's about to hit in the next couple of years. I'm calling them experience architects. They're essentially augmented reality designers that are designing an experience that can fit in your hands, that's good for wayfinding, asset tracking, etc., all this stuff. And we saw that at AU a couple of years back with which is now Locus Labs, I guess.
Yeah.
The Apple indoor mapping, which so I guess the question is do you see augmented reality playing a big part in the airport in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's probably, two areas. I think probably if you look at how we're making use of that at the moment, it's probably more from a commercial base. So you talk about wayfinding. Wayfinding and retail is a good revenue stream for us, and that kind of indoor mapping technology that's available now, we're utilizing that to help guide our passengers, help guide them where the deals are within retail. So that's starting to get some momentum, and I think there's a lot more that we want to develop from there. But I also want to start to use this as the design develops. And if you think about safety inductions on site,
Oh yeah.
where you can just virtualize people into the site, or where we're doing a lot of one thing that Heathrow gave us was the thinking behind off-site manufacture, so that we can do all the assembly on site. We've got a tunnel project where we're utilizing that technique, and where we can use augmented reality to move yourself into the M&E pods that are being developed off site. So again, from how you maintain them, you can sort of spin yourself straight into where they're being built, and there are many other user cases where we can utilize that form of technology, and even moving into things like operational readiness. So once we actually get our construction ready, we then have to get our operational teams ready. But if we can do that a lot earlier on, we've got a much better way of moving different airlines into new office space, or whatever it needs to be. So yeah, I can see it playing a real big part, and even in terms of utilizing it when you're doing your kind of verification of the design against what's being constructed.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Just from pure dynamics of person flow and stuff like that, it's going to be a very interesting world, and it's happening very quickly. And
Absolutely.
I think it's going to kick off once we start seeing the glasses appear, which is going to change a lot. And so, like myself, I've been getting prepared for it quite a bit, having to study up on all the different applications that are going to be taking place soon, and how we're going to be able to take data through all these different applications, because we don't see that data flowing through things like Unreal and 3ds Max and Unity and all this stuff easily yet. Like yes, you can take it, but there's still a lot of disconnects and a lot of communication to happen. So it's
absolutely. I mean, we took our fire safety team through just with the cardboard glasses to go through this tunnel project, which they couldn't get to during the day, and it was excellent. That they were able to immerse themselves into the design, which was great.
That's fun to see. So, I guess Heathrow has its own its own area to deal with. There's a lot of big infrastructure projects. We have projects out in Calgary who have entire database solutions for multiple schools. We have the Ohio State, which has their entire property all wired together in different classifications and Kobe and all that. So, data is big. So I guess the big thing is for clients or developers or, facilities managers, leaseholders, whatever, do you have any advice for any consultants when preparing a building lifecycle management strategy?
Yeah, I guess it's obviously it's quite
It's a loaded question.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
if you look at technologies, there are a lot of overlapping technologies
Hmm.
out there, and a lot of the technologies tend to be focused at a different area of the life cycle. And there isn't a magic bullet solution out there. I'd love to just be able to go to single vendor and have that total solution, but maybe that's not the best from a procurement a way you procure anyway. So there are a lot out there. I think in your first instance, you need to get your data strategy in place.
Very important.
And we found that really important across Heathrow, and not just around asset systems, but the wider kind of digital systems, because you tend to go out and procure a system, and then you find that you need to squeeze your data into that system,
Yeah.
rather than actually having a really sound data strategy that covers your whole operations.
Hmm.
And then the technology kind of almost becomes a commodity, because technology will kind of fade in and fade out, and you want that to happen. Your data is key, and if you've got a really sound data strategy,
Hmm.
those different technologies, as as I say, some of them will overlap. You can bring them in at the right times. If they're exploiting a particular user case, you can add something on. But as long as that data strategy is in place and you've got that foundation work running, I think it opens the doors. And I think if you look at Heathrow, we probably haven't really focused on our overall airport data strategy, and it's something we've done in the last year. We've kind of used the time due to
As you should.
COVID to
Yeah.
to try and get this um, really sorted, so that we can make sure that as we start to build back as an airport,
Hmm.
we are fitting things into the way we want them to work, as opposed to being kind of reliant on what's out there. So yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's always good to work with different vendors as well, so that you can see the art of possible.
Hmm.
So that's another thing. Don't kind of just put all your eggs in one basket. Don't just go to one vendor. Be very open and transparent with vendors, because quite often they'll have to be working together to
Yeah.
integrate their solutions, and that really is important. The whole in integration of solutions.
Yeah. So the big thing, make a strategy. Like, yeah.
So I just keep coming back to data. Every
Hmm.
technology and IT project I've been involved in, we always have an issue about the data.
Yeah, yeah, and it's true. And it's funny because we always get talking about this product or this product or this product,
Yeah.
but it usually ends up coming down to, you have to customize it to your own solution, and you want to be able to pinpoint yourself a third party that can adapt and evolve with your endeavors. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I always relate. I
yeah,
mean, we don't use them so much now. iTunes or Media Player, which one?
yeah,
Well, actually, it doesn't really matter as long
hmm,
as you've got your data right on all your albums. They will
exactly.
fit to any of the systems any of those systems, and you will be able to do exactly the same thing. You'll be able to choose your album, you'll
Yep.
be able to choose your artist, all because the data is right.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good fit. Well, you know what? This has been a great chat. We like being part of the FM industry and in general, or just FM operations, asset management, digital information, is integrating at such an early stage now, and it's up to, and if for all the listeners, just really focus on where that end data is coming. I think the last 20 years has been very transitionary because we were so used to, let's say, in the construction or the project information model, we're just like, let's cut it off and hand it off. It's their problem now. Well,
Yeah, absolutely.
for the client, the client really has to stress that we should be integrating all these things at the beginning and creating a strategy around it. And that's why the ISO 19650 is becoming so important. So I know, again, Nigel, thanks for hitting that home, because we need to see that a common data environment can work, and Heathrow's proven that, and you've really lightened our eyes up a bit in terms of how that should look. But Nigel, thank you for coming online. It's been fantastic.
Great, it's been a pleasure, and yeah, really nice talking to you again. And yeah,
So yeah, we're gonna sign
thank you.
off. Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you everyone. This is Buck FIM. Keep on bimming. We'll see you next week when we'll be talking with Juice Fanu about specifications and the integrations into with new upgrades in technology. It's going to be a fantastic presentation. So thank you again. Take care. Keep on bimming.